he already knew that I had been blocked from staying at that apartment. So when they knew I didn't have a cell phone, and they knew that I couldn't go back to a apartment and use the telephone, where did they think I was going to make my calls to find out what was wrong with how my license had been suspended? I mean, at the drop of a hat, last minute. They also knew that I was in college, that I would miss college courses to just stay in a hotel and wait around for somebody to maybe pick me up. I would miss my classes and have my grade affected by that. So I hitchhiked. I basically literally went to this truck stop that was across the field, found out, I asked if they could, help me with that, if anyone was going towards Portland. They said no, so I said, well, what should I do? And they said they didn't know. Actually, there was a truck that was pulling into that stop, and I asked him if he was going towards Portland, and he said yes. And I thought, well, maybe if he's a semi-truck driver and he has to be licensed, and they have to go through some federal checks sometimes. I thought it might be safer to go with him than to go with just a random person, after sticking my thumb out on the freeway in the middle of the night. So he said that he would take me to this, take me back to Portland, which was where he was. And he dropped me off, and, it was very weird. It was like, I was very thankful to him, but it was just something I had never done my entire life, ever. And I was forced to do it by the federal government. So, and employees of the federal government. So basically, I got into Portland, and the first place that I could find, I was fortunately close to a string of hotels that were near Portland State University. And I ended up staying at the cheapest place that I could go to. It was a place the people there who ran it were Indian, Eastern Indian. And they had a good rate. I didn't realize that, once again, that they were right across the street. They were next door to the Archdiocese of Portland and Oregon. And I had no idea. They were right next door. And when I found that out, I thought, this is very strange. I hope my room is not tapped or bugged, or someone's not sitting outside of it listening in. So I checked into a room, and I started making phone calls the next day. And I did miss my class anyway, because I had to spend the entire day making phone calls to find out what had happened to who had suspended my license when there were no grounds to have it suspended. So I called. It took a long time because the police wouldn't even tell me where they had this alert issued from. So, I called their police department again, and I asked for information. They said they didn't have any. And then someone suggested maybe call the DMV, and then they were saying that they didn't have any information, and I looked current to them. Then I was calling all over the place. And finally someone said, why don't you check on the courthouse in Wenatchee? And I thought, why? This was after a couple days of working on this, because I couldn't figure out what was wrong. I called Olympia DMV, and they said, no, you're current with us. You are not illegally suspended with us, and it has to go to them. If I had been illegally suspended, they would have a record of it. So Washington DMV and Oregon DMV both confirmed that I was not illegally suspended, and that there were no grounds for me to be suspended, have my license suspended. And I had all of my driver's insurance was up to date, so that's not why this officer towed my car. I had my registration, I had all the correct papers, I had current auto insurance. The entire reason that I was approached was that he got an alert with somebody claiming that my license was suspended. I was driving with a suspended license. So I was then I then had someone, I don't remember who it was, but they said, why don't you check with the Wenatchee courthouse? And I thought, that's really strange. Why why would anybody in Washington State, in Wenatchee, have anything to do with my license being suspended, my being pulled over in Oregon? But I called, and when I did, the clerk that I talked to said, yes, Judge Gerald Warren did it. And I said, well, how could he do that? And she said, what he did was illegal. She said, your license is not suspended. He suspended it for unpaid tickets. She said, but the courts in Olympia, Washington have decided that that law has not been passed. So it was pending in legislation. There was a law that was pending which would allow judges to suspend licenses for unpaid tickets, like traffic tickets. If you didn't make a payment agreement with the court, your license could be suspended. However, the law was on hold and under review, and it had not passed. So at the time that Judge Gerald Warren illegally suspended my license, he unlawfully did so because there was no law to provide for that. And his own clerk knew this. And she said, potentially down the road, they could approve this law if it goes to appeals and it's successful. But she said, as of right now, there's no lawful grounds for your license to be suspended because it cannot, by law, be suspended for an unpaid ticket. And that was why that's the reason that he had given for suspending my license. So, since it was clearly a mistake, I realized I had to go all the way back to Wenatchee, Washington. And since the DMV couldn't do anything about it, I had to go to Judge Warren and ask him to correct his mistake. So, I didn't have a way to get back to Wenatchee, Washington without my car. And it was already very clear that I was innocent and that he was guilty. So, since I was innocent, I had every right to get my car and to have this matter addressed. So I had already missed, almost an entire week of college courses because of this. So I still had, a copy of my car, a car key, and I had a driver's license. And what the Coburg Police had said is, once you are not suspended anymore and you give us proof that your driver's license is not suspended, then we'll give you your keys and your driver's license back. So they were basically holding my car hostage until I gave them proof that my license was not suspended. So they basically were telling me that I had to go to Judge Gerald Warren and get him to remove this suspension in order to even get my car back. And who was going to be driving me back and forth between states to do all this? So they knew that they were causing a problem for me. So since I had a spare key and a different license, I called up my dad and said I don't know what they've done with my car, but I need to pick it up. And he said he called and found out that he could get it out of towing, so it didn't keep racking up this incredible amount of fees and fines. But they wouldn't release it to me, so the only thing that they would agree to do is to have it taken to this Eugene Airport, or Coburg Airport. I believe it was the Eugene Airport. And they were going to leave it in this locked up airport facility. And the only way that I could leave with my vehicle was to show them, the agreement was that I had to show the guard there a license, driver's license. And then they would allow me to drive my car out of that airport lockup. So my dad dropped me off. I had the key. I got, when a former roommate, I paid him $50. He drove me down to the airport. My dad said that it was already there. And as I said, this former roommate drove me to the airport. My dad didn't. And he couldn't do it. And as I knew and expected, he had to work. So my parents wouldn't have been able to help me with any of these things. And the police knew this. They were kind of holding their hands, tying all of our hands in a general sense. So once he dropped me off, I went over to my car, started it up with the key that I had, unlocked it, started it up, and then I drove to the guard station, and the guard there said he had to see a license, so I gave him my license, and it was one that I had to have, they hole punched it before giving me a Washington one instead of an Oregon one, so they had hole punched my Oregon license. But I still had it with me, even though it had a hole in it from like the little hole punch deal. So he asked me, he said, "What's this?" The hole punch thing in it, the hole in it. I said, "Oh, it's for my..." I am not a good liar. And as I say, when my cousin lied about who had been mooning the sailboat when I was little, and how I say that it was good that he did it because I wouldn't have known what to do, it's because I was too honest. I never lied. I hardly ever did, and I always told the truth, and I got in trouble for everything I did. And in that situation where I knew I was innocent, and I knew the only way to get out, though, was to improve my innocence, was to lie, I justly and rightfully lied. And just looked really sweet and innocent, I guess. I tried very hard and tried to be nonchalant, and I said, "Oh, it's for my keychain." And he looked at me, and I was like, I put it on my keychain, and I showed him, and I think I have my little Mickey Mouse pendant hanging from this keychain on my keys, or whatever the keychain was. I showed him, and it made sense. I mean, it's kind of weird. Why would someone put their license on their keychain? But people do all kinds of things with keychains, and it was the right size hole for such a thing. So he had a little smirk. He had a little bit of a smirk on the corner of his lips. And I think he probably didn't have any idea that I was lying at all. And he said, "Okay." And he let me go. And then I knew I had to pick up my belongings from this gas station where I'd left things. And since it was in the Coburg area, and I figured they'd be trailing me and trying to track me and find out where I was going, I didn't want to go to that same gas station in my car and run the risk of having that officer see me driving and trying to track me down. So I didn't go into that jurisdiction with my vehicle. I went to a Motel 6, I parked in their parking lot, and I had the idea to say ask if I could get a shuttle to the gas station. And they agreed to get a shuttle me to the gas station so I didn't have to take my car over there. And I picked up my belongings, got the shuttle back, and then put everything in my car, and I took off and went back into Washington State. So I drove back to Washington State, and I went to Judge Gerald Warren. Did not know that I had my vehicle, I do not believe. When I showed up at his courthouse to ask him to correct his mistakes so that I could get my car back, quote unquote, from the police, he came up to the window and said, "No, I'm not changing this." He knew that what he had done was wrong, and I said, "But there is no law that allows you to suspend a license for unpaid tickets." And I even told him, I said, one of your own clerks told me this, and it's right here. The law states that it's pending, and you can't do this to somebody, and I need to have you correct this so that I can get my vehicle because I'm in college right now. And he just stared at me and he said, "No, I'm not going to do that." He said, I'm not correcting this." And then he smirked and sort of laughed in my face and turned around and left. So this is obviously very clear-cut malicious corruption, because that judge admitted that he knew what he had done was wrong and illegal, and that he didn't have any legal authority to do it.